Hey there, I'm Sully, and as always, welcome back to the Gun Club. Alrighty, if you looked at the title of today's video, today's stream, this evening's stream, whatever we're going to call it, you'll see I talked about gun control. Now, as we go into this, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about as far as gun control and different related things to gun control. And, I'm all for that to a point as far as doing something to keep society safe. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a favor of gun control. I'm not a favor of, infringing on 2A. And yes, I always, anytime I talk about gun control or possible gun laws, I always get at least one or two people send me an email or a little message here and there, say, haven't you ever read Shall Not Be Infringed? Yeah, okay. I get every bit of that, and let's not go there. I understand shall not be infringed. Now, if shall not be infringed really was legit with what they said it was and what it was intended, as our founding fathers did, and I've done a stream on that before, we would not have all of the infringements that are going on today. It is a fact of life that unfortunately, 50% roughly of the world, of our society in the US, comes up with all sorts of wonderful infringements. We watch it all the time. Let's face it, shall not be infringed means I should be able to go out and pick up any item, regardless of NFA or anything else or GCA, and I should be able to take it home that day. I'm not a felon. I'm not a prohibited possessor. I'm not a bad guy in any way, shape, or sort. And so, therefore, based on that, shall not be infringed if it was the ultimate the way it was intended. And yes, I will say that's how it was intended because at the time it was written, and if we look back to the founder's mindset and everything else, we'll say that, well, at those times, those colonists had just fought a war against the biggest empire, and that was Britain, and they sent all the king's horses and all the king's men back over to the other side of the pond again. We had declared independence. We were the little colonies that stood up to the king of England and all his merry men and all the German Hessian soldiers he brought in. And I've studied all that, and that's Revolutionary War, and we can talk about that because a little bit of a history buff some days. The other side of that coin is, though, before we even get into that concept, there are people out there, forces at work, whether it's, anytime demands action or moms demand action or anytime US, I don't even know. I can't even keep track of all the anti-gun, gun-grabbing, idiotic groups that are trying to pass laws out there infringing on 2A. They tap dance on it. Unfortunately, some members of Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, and some people in the White House, including some gentleman wandering around D.C. aimlessly with an ice cream cone in his hand, may actually feel that they can infringe on it. Now, we know they shouldn't. We know that's wrong. We understand all that. On the other side of that coin, why are they doing it? They're doing it out of fear. Most often irrational fear, frequently misinformed, ill-informed, don't understand what they're talking about. I often make the analogy of imagine taking somebody who knew nothing about driving a car, who had never driven a car, who did not know the first thing about a vehicle, didn't know the difference between an automatic and a manual transmission, and telling them to write the DMV rules of the road. We'd end up with some pretty screwed up rules. Unfortunately, in some cases, more often than not, some of the gun rules, laws, regulations, whatever we're going to call them, that are in effect or are being proposed or being talked about fit into that type of thing. We have people talking about, we have military style assault weapons on every street corner. No, we don't. You can go back and look at some of my, stupid politician clips where I go through and say, here, this politician said this on the record on this date, claimed this, and we all know it's false. Now, there is a percentage of the community, I'd say roughly 30-40% of the community out there in the world that have a pretty decent fundamental understanding of firearms. The more we have a voice in this, the more hopefully, if they want to pass something, they don't pass something stupid. And we've seen stupid stuff passed more times than not. So, again, from my standpoint, it is what it is. So, yes, I understand shall not be infringed, and I understand all of that. But I also feel if we want to come closer to that shall not be infringed, come closer to that whole utopian goal of ours of not having anyone tap dance on our constitutional rights, we've got to make our case. We've got to educate and explain and teach. Now, I think there's a big fallacy we have in this country, and I'll say it, and that is, again, some of the most ill-informed, misinformed, uninformed individuals, they're making laws and they shouldn't be. Again, if we had somebody who knew nothing about any of the rules of the road trying to write the driver's handbook, somebody who had never driven a car in their life or never owned a car in their life, yeah, that would work really well. I mean, let's think about it. If you have never flown an airplane in your life, would you try to write rules for the FAA? Hell no. If you had never cooked a meal in your life, would you try to write a cookbook? No. But yet we have people who have never fired a gun in their life, or apparently have never fired a gun in their life. Either they know better or they don't know better. If they know better, well, then they're just deliberately lying. If they don't know any better, then it's up to us to educate them because they're the ones who are trying to make the rules of the road for us. Think about it. If someone had never watched a hockey game and they tried to figure out what the rules were, yeah, it's kind of difficult. The same thing with baseball or football or anything. So it's up to the people who know to educate and inform and talk about this stuff honestly. Now, to dig our heels in and say, shall not be infringed, all gun laws are bad. Okay, I get where you're coming from, and to a point, I agree with you. It's unrealistic, though. It's the same thing as if, my fat ass was going to try to run the New York Marathon next month. Yeah, I may start out with some wonderful, great ideas. It ain't going to happen. It's unrealistic, and it's going to end up in a mess. Probably end up with me dead in Central Park, but that's beside the point. Again, we need to be realistic about what we can accomplish. We need to be realistic and come to the table and discuss things that make some sense. Hopefully, we can get some sense made out of some of this stuff. So let's get into some of the great gun control debate and some of the fallacies that are out there. Now, before we get really in depth on it, we also need to remember a few things. And I bring these up because I read a lot of gun blogs, pro-gun, anti-gun, everything else. There's actually a really interesting gun information sheet comes out on Quora, and it talks about firearms and firearms laws and everything else. And it's a place for people on Quora to ask questions and answers. And I'd say at least once, twice a week, I see something pop up on there. Well, we've had another school shooting or we've had another mass shooting. I hope the NRA is happy now. How many dead kids do they want before they're going to admit that we don't need machine guns in schools? Okay. We need to understand few simple things. The overwhelming majority of Americans, pro-gun, anti-gun, don't know anything about guns, never held a gun, own 50 guns, own 3,000 guns, firearms instructors, non-firearms instructors, the overwhelming majority across the board want to reduce crimes and violence. I think we can pretty much all go with that. The only people who don't really want to reduce crimes and violence are violent criminals, and I don't think they should have much of a voice at the table. Again, the overwhelming majority of Americans, these individuals, would love to end all school mass shootings, mass public shootings, whatever name we're going to give them, active shooter situations. If you don't believe that, let me tell you something. I worked EMS, public safety, fire, even brief career in law enforcement for many years, probably about 30 years overall. If you don't think I would love to end, violent crime and mass shootings and murders and things like that, I got a news flash for you. You ain't got a right to say that. I've put people in bags. I put kids in bags. I've had to pronounce kids out. I've had to explain to family members, I'm sorry, there's nothing more I can do. You can't throw that at me. You can't throw that at the people, men and women, who go out there, who work, whether it's public safety, whether it's police, fire, EMS, any of the branches, the ER nurses, the ER docs who have seen the end results of this crap. And yet some of them are not pro gun control because they realize gun control ain't fixing it. Some of them, unfortunately, work in some of the busiest metro traumas ERs. And guess what? They're seeing gunshot wounds and gunshots to kids every day. And yet, meanwhile, there's more gun laws in their city than anything else. So to sit there and say that, oh, we don't take it seriously, or we don't understand, or we're happy that kids are getting shot, you can't go there. Wrong answer. That's just nothing but a personal attack. It's a character attack. It's an ad hominem bullshit. And if you come to the bargaining table with that, you're not discussing the rules or the laws or what we can do to prevent it. You're too busy just attacking the other side and trying to make me the great villain. Well, you ain't got the right to do that unless you've gone out there and run the calls. I will also say this. Anyone who wants to say that about me, go out, run the calls. Go out, do ride-alongs with your local law enforcement in a bad metro area at night. And no, I ain't talking park patrol. I'm talking go out there and chase down shooters at night. And then tell me that these guys, these men and women, don't understand about what the gun problem is. Trust me, they do. They deal with it and they face it every day. They deal with the consequences of it. So can't attack that. The biggest stumbling block we have between the two sides is trying to decide how we want to achieve this end. We all know the goal. We can say that 95% of the country knows the goal. The other 5 to 10% of the sleazebag criminals, and like I said, I don't really think they should have a voice at the table. But how are we going to get there? How do we fix this? We also have to understand as basic premise as we go into this discussion, anything we do, we have to understand that, you know what? The laws we pass will primarily apply to those who choose to and elect to obey them. Oh, I just got a note here. The volume's kind of low. See if that's a little bit better. That's in the Rumble chat. Folks, if it is having a volume issue, please holler at me. Let me know. Throw something at me. I'll do my best to work on that. Now, any law we pass, again, primarily is going to apply to people who obey the law. That's interesting. We've got someone here, from Canada talking about how they just banned another 3,000 guns and rifles. So let me guess, the good citizens will turn theirs in and the criminals will laugh about it and keep them. I mean, a fact of life. That's what's happened. Fact of life. It's, the next one we have to come up with is a large percentage of the firearm related violence. And you can go back to the last couple of streams. We did the statistics on it. We went through all these mass shootings through the whole 4th of July. And I said, what were prohibited possessors, underage kids, fugitives from justice? And you just keep seeing that pattern emerge. There's where the problem is coming from. Now, if we can all agree that, okay, that's where the problem is coming from. In EMS, if someone is having pain in their chest and we say, well, we've done all these diagnostics and it seems that it's coming from your heart, or it seems like it's coming from a pulled muscle, or it seems like it's something you ate or it's indigestion. Once we know the source of it, we can treat it. So again, look at the statistics in your community, your town. How many of these are convicted felons? They're underage, they're fugitives from justice. And guess what? They're not people who are going to willingly obey or submit to or acquiesce to any law we pass. The great law that you pass out there, it's nice. It's on paper. But guess what? If laws were going to solve everything, we could just make murder against the law and we wouldn't have to worry about it. We could make shooting up schools against the law and we wouldn't have to worry about it. Oh, wait, it already is and it's still freaking happening. So maybe not just having laws and writing laws and we need better laws. Maybe we need to do something a little else. Now, Let's get into some of the common fallacies there. Kenzie, is my audio any better on that? I've tweaked it up a little bit. I'm sort of waiting to hear if I'm doing any better on the Rumble chat over there. Someone let me know if you can hear me or not. It'd be a shame for a good rant like this to go unheard. One of the first things I hear is we need better background checks. Now, this comes out from media. This comes out from public sources. I actually watched a podcast the other day, and there's a gentleman who is very intelligent, very well spoken, very much, and he said, well, it's ridiculous that he should be able to walk into a gun store and walk out the same day with a gun and all the ammunition for it, that they need to do some kind of background check. Okay. Now, what he left out of this, and again, this is someone I've got a lot of respect for. He may not realize, he may not have understood what all went on. They don't just take down your information on a little form and send you out with the gun. They actually can run your information electronically while you're standing there at point of sale. Simply stated, every single person in the United States who buys anything, long gun, AR, shotgun, handgun, pistol, from a licensed dealer, for any licensed FFL anywhere in the country, he or she is run through a background check at that time. Now, I have concealed carry permit issued by the state. I have a concealed carry instructor's card issued by the state. Even if I go to a gun store today, with both of those, I'm required to fill out the same forms that you are. I am required to provide valid photo ID, and I am required to wait there while they run my background check through locals and everything, NCIC and locals, federal background check. Now, I'm a known entity. The state knows me. They've got my fingerprints on file for all my CWP, my instructor stuff, everything else. Guess what? I still have to go through it, even though I've got cards saying I'm allowed to carry. In order to take possession of that firearm, I must still go through that. Now, in addition to that, several states require some degree of background check between private sellers and transfers. Now, that can be good or that can be bad. I'm not anti necessarily the concept behind it. And I think they tried to do it so that way, guns can't be purchased on the black market. The problem is if Frankie the felon is selling a gun to, Charlie the convict, and it's a stolen gun to begin with, guess what? They're not following that. So anything we add to background checks or purchasing or things that are going to make more difficult to purchase a firearm, guess what? I got bad news for you. Gun criminals, the criminals who are causing the vast majority of the problems, they're not getting them at, your local sporting goods store. They're not getting them at the local, PSA or City Arsenal or any of the places I like to go to buy my guns, or up at the gun store on Main Street or any of them. No, that's not where they get it. Much like, people who are on prescription fentanyl patches for cancer, they go to pharmacies and show ID to get controlled substances. People who are dealing with fentanyl pills in the back parking lot outside the local gas station, they're not trading at the same level. So we can make things more and more and more difficult to get firearms through legal channels. It's not affecting and has not affected the bad guys. It has not affected the criminals. Most people know when they go into a firearms store if they're going to be able to purchase or not. They're not going to even try and purchase something they're not allowed to. Now, will they have someone possibly do a straw purchase for them? Maybe. Will they come up with some different way? Maybe. The other side of the coin is, on the general rule of thumb, they're buying stolen guns on the black market. So, again, background checks or purchasing requirements, or we need to do better with that. Guess what? That's not helping. It's not going to do any good. It's really not, anything that's going to be more positive or more effective than what we've been doing. So I think we can try to add better checks or more extensive checks. They're not buying them that way, so it's not going to affect them. It's the same thing as putting a roadblock on a road to get DWI drivers, but if the drivers aren't on that road, we're not going to catch them there. Let's go to the next one. And this is an interesting one. We need waiting and cooling off periods. Okay. Now, this was put into effect because it was going to stop these crimes of passion, these violent, people just going out, getting in an argument with somebody or getting in an argument with their spouse, run down to the store, go through all the stuff for a background check, buy a gun with a serial number traced to you, and then drive home and get in a fight with your spouse and shoot them. Folks, if somebody already has other firearms, for example, if it's your first time buyer, you don't have any guns whatsoever at home, okay, I could see where a waiting or cooling off period might be helpful. But you go to some states, I think California is one of them, somebody can own 10 firearms at home. They go to buy something else, they have to go through a waiting and cooling off period. Okay. Again, make it make sense, folks. Waiting and cooling off periods. The states that have the laws, go back before the laws were enacted and say, okay, how many murders? How many murders? If you have not had a significant change, be willing to say, look, this ain't working. In medicine, we talk about evidence-based concepts. If we try this treatment and it works, we'll keep using it. If we try a treatment and it doesn't work, we won't keep using it. If we try it and it harms people, we'll stop doing it even quicker. Now, when I say harms people, how could these cooling off periods harm people? Well, I had a friend of mine was a waitress. I knew her years ago when I worked on the road. I worked late nights and she worked at a late night restaurant. I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of their hash browns like 72,000 different ways. She worked nights. She had 3 kids. Her husband was an over-the-road truck driver. And frequently, because it was a cash-only place at that time, they didn't take plastic or checks. Well, guess what? She'd go home in the morning with a whole fistful of cash. Yeah. Now, frequently get off in the morning after like a 10-hour shift. She's going home with a fistful of cash, wants to stop and get groceries or get this, that, and the other, whatever run errand she needed to do, and then go home, let the babysitter, who took care of the kids overnight, get on their merry way, and she'd take care of her kids during the day. Simple enough. If she needed to go through a waiting or cooling off period or go buy something today, then, okay, I can go back in 10 days and pick it up, or I've got to go through 5 days to get a permit and 10 days to pick it up. Guess what? It wasn't going to work really that easily for her. If she needed something because she had a stalker, and she did at one point, or she needed something or needed a firearm because of, hey, her husband's back driving a truck again, and they don't live in the greatest neighborhood, and she's home alone at night. And she asked me at one point to take her as her babysitter, who was her other sister, take the 2 of them out to the range and teach them how to shoot, because there's 2 women home with a bunch of young kids at night in a bad neighborhood while her husband was on the road. Great. At that time in that state, the joke of gun control laws that they had to run through to get firearms. These are law-abiding, decent citizens. I got news for you. The bad guys, they'd go out and get one out of the trunk of a car. They'd have it tonight to use tomorrow morning. And we all know it. Again, if everyone's going through a background check and convicted felons are running around with guns, they got to be getting them somewhere. Hint, not these places. So these things, again, only make things a little bit more difficult for the good folks. The other thing is, we look at mass shootings and active shooters. Most of these people plan this stuff months, years in advance. We show years of notes taken on some of this stuff. We show all the planning. A 5 or 10 day waiting period ain't going to do any good. So again, look, is there evidence that it's worked? Has it done any good anywhere? If it hasn't in those areas, repeal it. If it has worked, is it working? Does your state at least have an exemption for people who already own a stack of guns? I mean, honestly, all it would do if they had one here, and in South Carolina, fortunately, we don't. But if they put it in tomorrow, all it would be is waste a little gas and burn a little bit more auto exhaust driving back and forth to turn one trip into two. Would we apply this to any other thing, any other constitutional right? Well, you know what? You can actually pay for this car today, but you can't pick it up for 5 days because you might drive recklessly in it. We don't know. Well, but what if I can't get off to come up here and pick it up in 5 days? Well, you have to wait at least 5 days to purchase a car. Okay. And if it was a crime of passion where someone is so passionate that they're deciding they're going to commit murder, go out and get a gun, chances are they're going to go out and get a baseball bat or a steak knife or a kitchen knife or something else anyway. Show me the people who buy the gun today to commit the crime tomorrow. They're few and far between. So we got a law that was really well-meaning and well-intentioned, but really doesn't make a lot of sense or do any good. Now, this next one's going to be kind of controversial. People should have to go through training and classes. And this also comes from somebody who was on the internet and says, well, I served in the military, so I understand that, I should, be able to purchase a firearm and this, that, and the other. But I don't think people who haven't served in the military should be qualified to just do that. Now, I've got all the respect in the world for our veterans, all the respect in the world for people who have served, law enforcement, everything else. Great, fine, wonderful, more power to you. Mandating training and mandating classes, while it sounds good and it sounds great on paper, what would it do? Well, number one, it would add a big cost, a big expense, both in time and money. And who would it affect the most? Tell me. The woman and her sister who are trying to get a gun to put in the house because of the fact that the husband's on the road driving the truck. The one who's working 10-hour shifts at night to help take care of her 3 kids. Yeah, does she have time to go take 2 or 3 day class or 5-day class or 1-day class, what class it is? Does she have time to spend that money? How about somebody who is, single mom, doesn't even have a husband in the picture, got a couple of kids, and the neighborhood's getting worse and worse, and she's concerned? Can she tell her boss, I need to take a week off from work and get paid anyway because I got to go pay for this class? Some of the people who need, and I say need, not want, not would like, but need firearms the most to protect themselves are some of the most vulnerable people living in some of the worst areas, in the most crime-ridden areas. Let's face it, if they could move into a gated community with armed security, they probably would do it. These people are getting these things because you know what? They're scared. They're scared of what's going on. Maybe they work in a bad area. Maybe they've got to commute in a bad area. Maybe they work late at night. Maybe they have to come in early in the morning and they're afraid to be in the office alone at 4 o'clock in the morning, unlocking a door because people are getting jumped, because they're finding all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Yeah, these people don't have the time or money to do this. And people say, well, education is so important. Would we apply this concept to any other constitutional right? Let's see here. How about voting? Voting is an interesting one, and this is going to be controversial. If you can't pass an exam on the Constitution or a history exam, should you be denied your right to vote? Tell you what, you have to, hey, there's an idea with that waiting period. You have to come in today and prove who you are to vote, and then you have to come back in 10 days to actually cast your vote. Well, 5 to 10 days. There's a waiting period, so you understand. And you have to take a class to do it. Well, you can't vote. Why would we do it with guns? How about speech and assembly? Should you be required to take a class to have your freedom of speech? How about your right to freedom of assembly? I'm sorry, you haven't taken the freedom of assembly class, so your right to assemble and petition the government for redress of your grievances gone. How about the right to have an attorney? Remember, if you can't afford an attorney, the state has to provide you one at no cost to you. So we'll provide you a free attorney. Should we provide you free firearms education so you can live? Remember, it's not about a hobby. Now, to me, firearms are a hobby, but they're also a personal safety issue. But there's plenty of people out there, they don't want them for a hobby. They have no interest in them as a hobby, but they also know what happened to the little old lady up the road. They also know what happened to the guy who got jumped across the street. They also know the neighborhood they're living in, and they want to protect themselves. Should their right of self-defense, their right of life and liberty be dependent on paying for and passing a class? Now, I'm all for classes, and I've done a lot of discount and free classes for people. I've done a lot of discount classes for people who were in tight financial situations and told them, I'll tell you what, let's worry about getting you through the class, getting your paperwork done. Yeah, I'll take installments on the instructor fee because I could really give a damn. I think the state of South Carolina and the Liberty Caucus in South Carolina, who got rid of our state fee for the CWP, you still, whatever arrangement you make with the instructors between you and the instructor, but the filing fee for the South Carolina permit has been done away with. It's zero. It's a free permit now. Why? Because they realize people's safety shouldn't be dependent on whether or not they can afford it. If we're going to say that you need to have a class in order to have freedom of certain things, should we have a class for freedom of religion? I'm sorry, your church, does it have a permit? Do you have to have a permit to have your church be a valid church? Do you have to have a permit to cast the vote? Do you go through a class for that? No. I'm all for classes, and I'm pro-class, and I want to share knowledge and teach, and I enjoy teaching. But to put a barrier, a roadblock, or a stopping point to make it harder for someone to protect themselves, especially the most vulnerable, I've got a real problem with that. Let's see, next step here. Now, this is another one I hear, and I hear this a lot. We need to ban assault weapons. Now, there was an assault weapons ban that was put into place in 1994. It went for 10 years and expired in 2004, and it had very little, if any, effect. Quite frankly, if you read the old assault weapons ban, you can't even get half the people in this country to agree on what an assault weapon is. I think a baseball bat could very easily be an assault weapon if I used it to assault someone with. I think a knife could very easily be an assault weapon if I used it to assault someone with. My phone could probably be an assault weapon if I used it to whack up there, assault someone with. You know what? They're all worried about military assault weapons and all this other stuff and all these terms that are thrown out in the media that don't make a lot of sense. Fact. The worst school shooting, fatality-wise, in the country that ever happened was done with 2 handguns. Dos pistolas. So don't tell me, we need to worry about these military-grade assault weapons killing lots and lots of people. The worst school shooting was 2 handguns. So again, don't solve a problem that doesn't exist. Don't try to create a new problem to solve it, but it wasn't fixing the original problem. And the other thing is, when I go through the mass shootings that involved assault weapons, whatever we're going to say, or involved those AR things, those bad ARs, yeah. We might do another stream on those one of these days. But if we go through that, almost every one of them, the subject involved had other firearms as well. They've now come out and said that the Nashville shooter, the Covenant Church shooter at Nashville, the idiot who decided to shoot 6 people, 3 kids and 3 adults at that Christian church. They still haven't released any of the paperwork on the manifesto on that or anything else. Hate to make the shooter look bad, but the individual who entered had a AR-15 with them, and they also had a pistol carbine with them. They used the pistol carbine, not the AR. They didn't even use the assault weapon initially. They used the other gun. So we can ban things that are not causing the problem. We can fight about banning things and take things away that aren't causing the problem. And then when the problem doesn't fix itself, which with all the gun laws they've passed haven't fixed itself, well, then we'll ban more. And I think some days that's where we get to. Well, we'll ban all these and that won't fix it. We'll ban all these. Well, we'll ban all these. They keep banning things and not fixing anything, but never repealing the old bans. At least in this case, the ban came out and they said, well, turns out that the ban didn't do any good. And when they said that the ban didn't do any good, just for the record, that's the FBI's research on the National Institute of Justice who said that whether we renew it or not, it's likely not going to do any good. The FBI even said it. But you know what? You still have people in Washington wanting to say, well, we need to come back with this assault weapons ban. Yeah, because that works so well. If it was a big assault weapons ban between 94 and 04, what year did Columbine happen? Look it up. Just saying. Columbine? School shooting? Yeah. Look that up. And then tell me how well the assault weapons ban worked. Oh, wait, Columbine? Yeah, rifles, guns, shotguns, propane tanks, explosives. Yeah. Yeah. Now, we hear a lot of other things coming out. Braces, bump stocks, reset triggers, all these wonderful little boutique items. Now, over the last couple of years, they've rarely, if ever, been involved in any mass shootings. Now, don't get me wrong. If you look at the effort that the ATF has come up with to go after these items, and if we took the amount of man hours that were spent by the ATF and the ATF administration, and then in the courts, the ATF trying to defend bans on braces, pump stocks, going after reset triggers, if we took all those man hours of the federal ATF and put them into something intelligent, we might do some damn good. Right now, again, the braces, I know of 2, maybe 3 shootings in the last 5 years of the mass shootings that have involved a pistol brace. 2 or 3 in 5 years. Now, if we're going to say 2 or 3 shootings in 5 years and devote thousands of hours to getting rid of these items, we're fixing a problem that doesn't exist. Bump stocks. Only place in any of the mass shootings I know where bump stocks have played a part is at the Route 1 shooting out in Vegas. The gentleman up in the hotel room shooting down on the concert. Now, that was an awful event. Not saying it wasn't. That was the one time that these items had played a role in one of these mass shootings that I can come back to. Again, when you look through the history of the mass shootings and you read the reports, it's just not there. So we've fought about pump stocks and we've attacked braces and the force reset triggers. That's the new latest, greatest thing. We're going to have to get rid of these. They make these guns into machine guns. Do the bump stocks and or force reset triggers allow people to fire a little bit faster? Yes. Does it make it into a machine gun? No. Even if it did make it into a machine gun, folks, if you haven't fired a fully automatic machine gun, they're not particularly well controllable. They're not particularly very easy to use. And if you're not familiar with it, you've got about as much chance of hitting what you're aiming at as, the gun's going out of control and ammunition's getting wasted everywhere. So Even if they were as big and bad as they're made out to be, they're not practically a problem. If we took that effort, the time, effort, energy, and expense to ban all that stuff and defend all those bans in court, guess what? You know what the ATF could have probably done? Put half of that man hours, half of that time and expense into going after street level dealers in DC or Baltimore or Chicago, some of the areas, New Orleans, the murder capital of the world right now. Why? These cities, the illegal guns that are out there on the streets, you can get any one of these things. You can get all those toys. Yeah. So we're banning them, but honestly, it's not doing any good. Quit fighting something that doesn't exist. It's very easy, unfortunately, for people to sit in an ivory tower somewhere in DC and pontificate about we need to ban this, we need to do away with that, and everything else. Those of us out here in the firearms community go, this is so stupid, and we're going to debate it with them. That's fine. Guess what? They can, try to do anything they want. It's not solving the problem. If they really want to solve a problem, we'll talk about how to do that and put some effort in. We hear a lot about smart guns, and this is another one. There's already 400 million privately owned firearms in the US. Even if they mandated effective tomorrow that every single gun sold from this point forwards has some high-tech feature, whether it's you have to be wearing a ring to get it to fire, you have to have a fingerprint on a sensor to... Guess what? It would be a drop in the bucket. It would be a drop in the bucket. They're talking about, I think New Jersey is imprinting firing pins with a micro-engraved serial number. So when they find casings on the ground at a crime scene, they can look at it under a microscope and tell what the serial number on the gun is. Okay, sounds good on paper. The only problem is when they find the serial number, the gun's going to be stolen from who knows who 6 months ago or a year ago. I promise you, people who go out and do a bunch of shooting and leave a bunch of spent casings on the ground that they then have to try to track someone down, they didn't buy that gun on the books. They're not buying them legally. So, again, fingerprints on triggers. Yeah, that's great. Some of those wonderful biometric analysis things. Yeah, the fingerprint trigger. And I guess if your hand is sweaty or you've got a cut on your finger, if it doesn't read it right, guess what? Well, I guess you can't use your firearm. Now, that sounds all well and wonderful to a point, but let me tell you something. If you've ever had to draw a firearm in a lethal force encounter, sweaty hands are one of the first things you're going to have. And a lot of those biometrics, again, short of it being super high tech and super expensive, you now have just defeated the ability of the gun to do any good. So again, or you've got to have a certain ring on or a certain wristwatch. Yes, at 3 o'clock in the morning, you'll be able to use your wristwatch to match up to unlock the electronic locks on your gun. Again, they're coming up with wonderful 21st century, Jetsons group conclusions, Jetsons group fixes that don't make sense. And folks, I hope when you see this stuff, you understand I'm not doing this to shoot rocks or shoot holes in every single possible, thing in the world. And I'm not doing this to say, I want more kids getting shot in mass shootings. No, I'm doing this to say, quit wasting time and effort on stupid stuff, on the bump stocks, on the forced reset triggers. Forced resets, one mass shooting. Bump stocks, Vegas, the only time I can think of. Pistol braces, 3 times, and every one of them they had another firearm. So, yeah. Then we get into magazine limits. Now, nobody can even come up with a number of magazines that are out there of whatever capacity. So, again, this is kind of like that last one with there's 400 million guns out there. Now, if we assume there's 400 million guns out there, and some people have 4 or 5 magazines for each one of their guns, How many magazines could possibly be out there? No one knows. There's not even a known number. There's not even a serial number. And if I go out and buy 20 magazines today, nobody took down my name to do it. I'm not saying they should. But again, coming up with, oh, we'll limit magazines. What are you going to do? The people who already have a bunch, you're going to make them turn them in or get rid of them. The bad guys who already have a bunch are going to laugh and say they don't care. The good people will end up getting charged with stupid possession level crimes for accidentally not remembering about those 2 magazines they left at the hunting camp or whatever the case may be. Yeah, getting rid of large capacity magazines, this is definitely one. Much like, the assault weapons bans or anything else, all it's going to do is affect law-abiding citizens, and the criminals who are out there causing the problems, who are the problem, what are they going to do? Keep right on trucking. Because again, they're not even allowed to have the firearms that they have right now. Don't think they're going to turn them in. They're not. So even if we outlawed every single standard capacity magazine today, anything over 10 rounds, yeah, we'd have piles and piles and piles of magazines get turned in. We'd have everybody have to go out and buy a whole bunch of those 10-round magazines. And the thing is, the criminals out there would say, oh, that's nice. Nice to know that everyone is a little bit less able to protect themselves. We'd cater to the criminals, because I promise you, the bad guys ain't turning in their mags. Red flag laws, first off, it's a mess of a constitutional issue. We cannot have a law in this country that says you're guilty based on someone else saying so until you prove yourself innocent. I often talk about this, if I called up and said, hey, my ex-wife is a lousy driver. She texts and drives. She's on the phone all the time. She's absolutely a lousy driver. When she's not doing that, hell, she's putting on makeup in the rearview mirror going down the road. She's clearly a danger to everyone else. Would they red flag her driver's license? Would they go to her house, confiscate her car at gunpoint? Would they tell her she's no longer allowed to operate a motor vehicle until she goes to the judge and proves that she's not a dangerous driver? Huh? How about the guy who runs in and out of your subdivision too fast, zipping up and down the road? Should you call and red flag him? Well, have the police go by and tell him, hi, we're here to pick up all your vehicles. We have a red flag order. No, I know we haven't seen you driving recklessly, but we got a call here from Sam Smith up the road. I don't know. He says you're a reckless driver, so now turn over all your vehicles and keys at gunpoint, and you're not allowed to have possession of a motor vehicle until you prove to the judge you're safe. We would never do this with that. We would never apply this to automotive, stuff. But wait, there are more people killed by cars than there are murdered by guns every year, about twice as many. Twice as many people killed by cars as there are by guns. So I guess if I call someone up and I say, this guy named John, he does a lot of drinking and driving, so go take his cars. Can we send the sheriff's department out to his house, confiscate his vehicles? He's a danger to himself or others. If it saves just one life, we'd never do that. But yet they're trying to do it regarding firearms, because firearms are not a real right. They're not number 2 in the Constitution. Now, the interesting thing is, when you look at red flag laws, every single state in this country has some law designed in place to mandate care for individuals who are dangerous to themselves or others, for mental health care. The law already exists. It has nothing to do with whether or not that individual has firearms or not, or pew-pews or bang-bangs. No. It has everything to do with, hey, look, this person, if they are a danger to themselves or others, they need help. And so from that standpoint, we need to do our best to try to get them the help that they need. Now, that doesn't necessarily, while it might involve at some point doing something to, deal with firearms, even more so than that, I think it should involve getting someone the care they need if they're actually that much of a danger to themselves or others. And those laws exist. You know, I was talking with someone the other day who was dealing with an issue with a family member who is out of control. The individual is quite literally on drugs, out of control. Somebody asked me, and I said, it's going to be tough love time. Probably need to go in and initiate, procedures to have somebody either taken into custody as far as mental health hold or 72-hour hold, or take him to the ER because this person is quote unquote out of control. That's what was being described to me, out of control. So if someone's mentally out of control, then if this person doesn't have any guns or firearms or anything, they're mentally out of control. They're messed up on drugs. They're taking anything they can get their hands on. Okay, they can be committed to a psychiatric facility or at least taken in for hospital eval and get a 72-hour hold, and they can get care. The worst part to me about the red flag laws is, while it theoretically goes out and takes away all their guns, well, if they miss a couple, they might. You never know what they could miss a couple. Someone has something in a storage unit or something else, or someone has some hidden somewhere else. Or, okay, we went out to their house, we took all their guns, but we left them with all their kitchen knives and the gasoline in the garage and the vehicle outside with the keys to it. If someone is a danger to themselves or others, they need care. Providing care and support and mental health services to them should not start with stripping them of a constitutional right and leaving them home to be more upset about it. That's poking the bear with a stick, asking for something good to happen. If someone's that dangerous, let's push for care. Let's come up with better systems of care to get someone into a healthcare setting so they can be helped, as opposed to, well, we'll go out, poke them with a stick, take all their guns. Let's face it. If someone is really, really paranoid and thinks that everyone's out to get them, having armed men show up at their door and strip them of their ways to defend themselves, that couldn't help. And that person's never going to then get out and go do something stupid like fill up a bunch of, propane cylinders with explosives or gas cans in the backseat of a car like we've seen. So again, red flag laws, no. If someone is that dangerous, let's get them help. Let's seriously work to protect them from themselves, not be so selfish that we just want to protect ourselves and leave them to die or kill themselves or whatever. Now, here's a good starting point. I've told you what won't work. And I'm looking right now. We've got about 7 people watching in the chat. Folks, give us a thumbs up if you would, or hit with a comment. Where's everyone from? I know we had one person mention they were in Canada. I'm sorry. I think, nothing against Canada. It's very beautiful up there. I've got a few friends who have lived up there over the years. But Canadian gun laws have sort of gone off the deep end, I think, here. I know where I'm at. We right as I started the stream up, we got a big thunderstorm warning and all kinds of stuff, and we're currently under a severe thunderstorm warning and a few other warnings going through, and another severe thunderstorm warning. So it's going to storm here. It's going to rain. But I think one thing we can do, and this one is the one I found in one community in Florida is doing it. It's a local grassroots campaign, community-based, 100%, doesn't require any law be passed, basically just requires that jurisdiction to put in the procedure and the policy for it, and they started it off. And it's felons with a firearm equal money. With felons with a felon plus firearm equals 500, something to that extent. And I sort of quoted it out here to change it. This is a grassroots community-based. If I know XYZ or Joe Smith up the road is a felon, and I know he's got a gun, I call the local 800 Crime Stoppers number or whatever number, a tip line number or whatever it is. And I say, hey, he's a convicted felon. He's got a pew pew. And they look him up and say, well, yes, he is a convicted felon and he's got a pew pew. He's not supposed to have that pew pew. And then law enforcement goes out and searches him for the pew pew. Every gun they find, the person who's called in the tip gets a bounty on it. Yeah. So if he's got 3 guns and I'm getting $250 a piece, I just got $750 out of him and took 3 guns out of a felon's hands. Now you may say I'm being mean, I'm picking on this poor guy, I'm targeting him, I'm profiling him, whatever you want to say. These are the people, and we go back to the beginning premise, realize the vast majority of gun owners in the country are legal, law-abiding citizens. There's a small percentage of them that are not, and those are the people that cause the vast majority of the problems with guns. I want every little gang member who's got a record, or every little prohibited possessor, or every little underage kid, every little 15-year-old who's running around with a 30-round mag, I want them to be wondering when someone's going to call on them. I want them to be wondering, man, my ex-girlfriend going to call on me? So-and-so going to get me in trouble for this gun? Because guess what? It'll be real interesting. You want to take firearms out of the hands of felons, out of the hands of prohibited possessors, while leaving your law-abiding citizens alone? This will do it. You want to address gun crime? This will do it. The thing is, it doesn't require any new law. It makes the use of the already existing laws to address them. Secondly, it's not some great idea of pie in the sky if we're going to prevent pistol braces and force reset triggers and all this, that, and the other. No. This takes a firearm out of the hand of a prohibited possessor on the street and provides that night. This can work that night. And if you don't think we have the money in this country to support it, how much money are we dumping on what other project? I have an idea. Stop sending money to Ukraine and stop doing this. And people say, oh, well, they'll just get another one. Yeah, once they get charged with the 3rd or 4th time, they might decide to stop doing it. They might realize that by them carrying or owning or having possession of a gun that they know damn well they're not supposed to have, they may decide they're putting a target on their back. And all of a sudden, instead of the good folks having to worry about being targeted, the bad boys will be. And guess what? The mere act of these individuals possessing a firearm is enough for them to be arrested. It's a charge. It's a crime. Let's deal with this where we can make sense of it. Another thing we can do, and I'm a big believer in this, we need to increase firearm safety education. We need to remove the taboo. We've got kids in school who have been suspended for chewing a Pop-Tart into the shape of a firearm, for making finger guns, things like that. You know what? We need to start out at elementary school with the 4 rules for kids, the basic pediatric education version of it, of 4 gun rules for kids. If you see a gun, stop. Don't touch. Run away. Find an adult. If we can't get kids to do that, and we do that in elementary school from like 2nd, 3rd grade on, stop, don't touch, go away, call an adult. And they do it every year. And say, well, we don't have time to do that in school. You know how many hours I spent in school learning stop, drop, and roll? Now, not saying it's bad stuff. Not saying fire safety isn't important. Not saying the EDITH or exit drills in the home aren't important. I know Sparky will claw my eyes out. Sparky the fire dog will claw my eyes out if I don't, know all my fire safety stuff, my public fire education. But folks, if we can't do something about gun safety prevention, get kids to not touch them, don't touch them, don't touch them, don't touch them. By middle school, we review those 4 basic rules. Maybe teach them a little bit more, little information, nothing fancy, nothing crazy, but we also take the mystery out of it. Then we get into high school. We've done the 4 rules for kids a couple times. We teach the 4 rules for adults. And who knows, we may even try to at some point, the kids, if the parents approve, let the kids go out and have a field trip to go target shooting with 22 long rifle. You know what? I bet there would be plenty of, decent ranges that would be more than happy to support this type of thing. I mean, I know in Greenville, we've got the Greenville Hurricanes. It's a riflery marksmanship team made up of, I think, 14 and up. 14 and up. And what are they learning? They're learning about responsible, safe firearms ownership. They're learning to respect the firearm as a tool. They're learning how to use it appropriately, how not to make mistakes with it, and how not to hurt people with it. It's no great secret. It's no great taboo. And all of those kids go through piles of safety training. And you know what they're not going to be? They're not going to be the one who goes to their friend's house or sleep over at some friend's house and they find a gun in dad's underwear drawer and they start playing with it and accidentally have an oops. Because we do have those oopses, and those oopses are tragic. And most of the time, those oopses are the gun is there, but no one told me anything about it. So remember, parents, if you don't tell them what you're talking about, how inquisitive and curious are they? Yeah, let's take the mystery out of it, take the taboo about it, teach them the simple rules, teach them the adult rules. Maybe we can eliminate some of the accidental deaths in there. Some of the accidental 50 shades of, oh my God, what just happened? You just shot Cousin Wilbur. Because folks were having it, unfortunately. And that's where some of the problem comes in here. We're having people get accidentally shot when there's no excuse for it. All righty. Well, folks, that's all I've got for tonight. As always, if you want more information on this or any of our other stuff, check out our Twitter feed. We post our notifications up there. Got a Facebook out there. Drop me an email if you have any questions. If you want to yell at me about don't I understand what 2A means and what shall not be infringed means, you're more than welcome to do it. But I understand what shall not be infringed means. I counter with there's a gazillion gun laws all over the books, most of them very poorly written and very ill-conceived. And so as a result, not really getting anything productive done with that. Beyond that, I also want to say, please check out our video library on Rumble. If you like this, share it out. Share it out to your friends who are not pro-gun, your friends who are anti-gun, your friends who think those pew-pew things are all bad. Be an ambassador to the 2A community. Help educate citizens on the fact that, we're not out here as firearms owners wanting to go blow away the world, and we're not out here trying to get everybody shot. And no, we're not proud of ourselves every time a school gets shot up. What we are is we're responsible firearms owners who not only want to be able to protect ourselves and our family, but we want that for everyone else. We want everyone to be able to protect themselves and their family. And I know, there's plenty of times I've taken people out to the range. I've even taken a couple of people out. I took one person out to the range. It was an interesting story. It was her and her mom came out to the range with us. Her husband does a bunch of IT work for me at my full-time business, and we were talking, and I took her and her mom out to the range. And her mom got to fire an AR-15. She got to fire an AR-15. They thought they were living in high cotton. But you know what? It was fun. I took all the mystery out of that AR-15. Now, next time I talk to her, I'm pretty sure she's going to say, hey, that was me you were talking about on there. When are we going to the range? Yeah, I know. Yeah, I owe you a range day. We'll have to go out and do something. If weather's good this week, maybe we'll do something. Either that or if weather's going to be hot as balls here, we'll just go catch one of the indoor ranges. I'm sure I can find an indoor range or something that'll let us go out and break out with a firearm or two. Folks, I appreciate your time. Check out our other videos. Check out what we got. Give us a like, a subscribe, share, whatever the case may be. And by all means, please be smart, be safe. Bye.